What's good? It's Purge coming at you to say that I read shoot. Hey, what's it called, Gumball?
Are you trying to say book?
Exactly. A buke.
Right. That's what it's called. So, like most random things that I do, there's typically a backstory. So I was watching South Park. It was the episode The Tale of Scrody McBoogerballs, and I believe it's season 14, episode 2. In that episode, they were told to read Catcher in the Rye for class, and they were told that it was this really violent and vulgar book that got everyone super excited to read and amped up because that's the kind of thing that they like. They like things that are inappropriate and things that are not too old for them or whatever. And then when they actually read the book, they realize that the book is nothing like that. It's just a few swear words here and there, but it's just really a harmless book. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that they do. They people teachers in school will hype you up to read a book by saying that it's too violent and that it was banned or whatever. And from what I hear, Catcher in the Rye really was banned. They essentially just lie to you saying that the book is more than what it actually is, just to get you excited to read it, until you realize that it's a book. it's not a whole lot to it. It's even if it was at some point risque and inappropriate at one point, now the boys watch things like Terrence and Phillip, where it's just the characters constantly farting and stuff like that. So a book like this isn't the kind of thing that would really excite them. But anyway, I was curious as to what Catcher in the Rye really was for myself. So I went down to the Gumball.
To liberate! The Libera!
The Liberium?
The place where all the nerds hang out.
Yeah, that place. And I went there and I got a copy, and I was happy to see that it was only 277 pages. So I would figure, yeah, I could knock this out. Just to get a little bit of my history with reading in general. I don't want to say that I was a really advanced kid or anything, but when it came to the reading groups that they used to put you in, I was always in the higher one, as in the highest one. Yeah, reading has never really been a problem for me. At least not the physical act of reading. I was able to read a lot of big words. I'm not trying to, I said, how do I say this without sounding braggy? Yeah, I was reading was fine. I was able to read perfectly fine. I think I was able to do it. As for the books that I read, I remember that I loved The Magic Tree House. Though if I'm being honest, I can hardly remember anything about the books. All I really remember is that the main characters were named Jack and Annie, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look it up later. Besides that, I read, the obvious Captain Underpants and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, stuff like that. But one of my favorite of all times was Wayside. I remember that there was a show on Nickelodeon called Wayside, and when I saw that this was just in my classroom, I decided to see if the books were something like the show, and I was happy to find out that they were actually better than the show, because looking back, the show was... But I really liked the books. I love the books, actually. They were really funny and creative, and each chapter is just based on one of the students in the classroom, and you get to really like get a sense of what the school is really like, how wacky it is, how crazy and goofy the characters are, and it's a really funny book. And the other one that I really liked was Big Nate, which they also recently just turned into a show. And let's just say I wasn't thrilled by the trailers. But anyway, yeah, those were the main books that I read. But as I got older, they expected us to read more, mature books. So those kind of books wouldn't really cut it. And what I ended up realizing is that I ended up reading a whole lot of sports books because, I like sports in general, and I don't really, read a book casually. So if I'm going to read something, it's going to be something that I like, something I know. When it comes to like movies, sure, I like sports movies, but not every movie that I watch has to be a sports movie. It can be any kind of movie. But when it comes to books, since I'm not as into reading books, I have to be convinced that it's something that it's worth my time, something that's worth reading. So even if I like reading that particular sports book, I would much rather watch a sports movie or, play a sport. I think where I kind of started to fall off was when I had to constantly be reading. Not only did school just keep forcing it on you with these assigned books and stuff, but like they also just like expect you to just read on your own time, My mom, she was an English teacher, and she always expected me to read for pleasure, and I didn't have the heart to tell her reading doesn't give me pleasure. So it's kind of a loss there. But yeah, whenever we got to that point where like I had to just be reading for no reason at all, I would just kind of grab a book and I would just kind of start reading the words until I was told that I could stop. And the thing with that is that although I could read the words perfectly fine, I wasn't always like comprehending exactly what I was reading. I was just kind of going through it and skimming it, but the actual content was kind of lost on me. I wasn't really paying attention. I was kind of, when I'm reading the words, I was kind of just like thinking about other things and then go on to the next page, which isn't a good thing, but it's just like sometimes I'm on a deadline and I have to read a certain number of pages at a certain number of times. So I would just like, if I started to doze off at some point, I just kind of like, I have to keep moving on, keep pushing or whatever. And I'm not going to lie, that time when I was like, when I did start to like doze off, kind of stop paying attention, that happened a little bit while I was reading Catcher in the Rye this time. But instead of just continuing on, I actually read back those parts. And I wanted to be sure that I was able to comprehend exactly what I was reading, and I was able to fully digest the book as a whole. I haven't been forced to like read a book in a couple of years. In fact, it's been a couple of years since I've actually taken an English class, because I remember my senior year of high school, I took a college level course at my high school, so that was able to fulfill my English credits for college. And so I haven't been forced to read a whole lot of books lately, so I just kind of haven't. But I'm constantly reading things all the time. Like I like to go on TV tropes and read things. I read texts, I write texts. So basically, yeah, if I can do all this stuff, I can read a book. So yeah, on my own, without anyone telling me to, I went on and read Catcher in the Rye. So to go back to South Park, I think they kind of nailed what Catcher in the Rye is. Like, there are some more adult things in the book. Like, there's a lot of swearing, underage drinking, smoking, prostitution, a lot of stuff like that. That is, honestly, it is too old for specifically the South Park kids, because like they're only in like 4th grade. I think they are a little too young for Catcher in the Rye, but in general, like, I think it's just, standards have changed or whatever, but like, yeah, there really isn't a whole lot on surface to get worked up about. Now, I've heard that there might have been some hidden meetings about things or whatever, but I think a lot of the controversy around Catcher in the Rye are things that happened around the book, not necessarily in it. So, is this a good book? Honestly, I have no idea. Here's the thing. I don't read enough books, at least not like classic literature, to really like compare it to. I don't know how to say if this book is better than another book that I've never read, because I don't think I've read enough books to really know what the standard for a book should be. See, when it comes to something like The Last Airbender movie, not only have I seen the show, but I've also seen other movies to compare it to, so I'm able to say that it was a really terrible movie. But I will say this. I do kind of study like basic techniques when it comes to writing in general, and I think this book does a pretty good job at it. I like what they do with the first person narrative. There's a lot of vocabulary that isn't really used nowadays that I'm still able to understand because of the context. They're really good at, show don't tell, that kind of stuff like that. So yeah, I think what I would say is like, I can't say if this is a good book necessarily, but I can say I liked reading it. I thought I got something out of it, particularly this part towards the end. Spoilers if you've never read the book, though if you have no interest in it, then I guess it's fine. But although it comes from a character who may or may not be a bad guy, it's not exactly clear because the protagonist himself doesn't exactly know, but he says something about sizing your mind, kind of in the same way like you size clothing. You might find things that are too big or too small for you, but what you do is you take what you have and you make adjustments with that. Like, if you find yourself in a place where you don't exactly quite think fits for you, you can recognize the parts that do fit and don't fit, and you try to put yourself in a place that allows you to feel like you really do fit. Things that you think actually works for you. And that's something that I think is actually pretty powerful. Now, does this make me want to read more books? No. But I will say that I kind of enjoyed this. I kind of enjoyed checking out something that people are saying is classic, something that people really do like, and I'm glad that I actually did get something out of it. And I think being able to really do something that I don't usually do is good. I'm glad that I actually went on and read a whole book without being told to. Although I liked reading the book, I also like South Park making fun of it. It was really funny. But yeah, I'd say if you want to try something new, do it. I'd say there's nothing wrong with reading a book every now and then, and I might do it if I think that it's something that I might like to do. If I find another reason to read a book, I'll read it. But don't hold me to that. And with that, I'll catch you.